We bought a horse barn that was no longer in service, that had indoor arena with it, and the University of Wyoming practiced in this barn, and so we ended up buying a bucking horse from a neighbor, and then we bought some bulls, and obviously we had calves and steers, and so we basically started out as a practice facility for the University of Wyoming.
And then when did you become professional?
Oh gosh, I don't know the exact answer to that, but I'm going to say 1983, 1982. My dad had been in a rodeo company with Jim R. White and Les Gore, the Summit Rodeo Company there in the 60s. And then he went dormant there for a few years, and then we picked that back up and renamed it and started doing pro rodeo again there in the early 80s.
So how did you come across Mr. T?
Well, as I said, University of Wyoming was practicing there, and then at that time, the PRCA was doing some permit sections for the bull riders. You know, I know Gary LaFeud was doing one in California. We were doing them there because the kids just could not get in the rodeos. You know, I mean, that was a time where permit kids couldn't enter. And so we were bucking a lot of bulls in Laramie because we were the only indoor arena for miles around back then. And we picked up the PRCA deal, and we went to bucking 30, 40, 50 bulls a weekend. So we were always on the lookout for bulls, working the sale barns and neighbors and everything else. And anyway, the last year that the NFR was in Oklahoma City there in 1984 at the Jim Shoulders Bucking Horse and Bull sale, Jim Sutton was selling a load of Wrangler fighting bulls that didn't make the grade. And I took my college money that my grandma gave me, I don't know how happy she was with that, and bought 6 bulls that were cold weather bulls that I could take up and go to bucking in Laramie, Wyoming. And Mr. T just happened to be one of those 6 bulls. At the time, he was straight away. I mean, he'd jump and kick out through there, and I mean, the bull riders didn't like him at all. He was nothing compared to what the finished product ended up being. It was just a fluke deal. We just bought him at a sale when nobody else really wanted him.
So do you know when and where was he born?
He was born in 1978 on the Mundorf Ranch in Alliance, Nebraska.
And do you know who his parents were?
Well, he's out of kind of a scrubby looking Corianti bull and a big, beautiful gray Bramer cow. There's pictures of him. We have pictures of him actually, because you know, as things progressed, we had lots of people wanting to claim they raised him and did this and did that. Mundorf actually sent my dad a picture of him as a 8, 10-month-old calf standing there beside his mother.
All right. Did you recognize something special about him when you first got him, or did it take a while?
No, I mean, he was good enough for what we were doing there in Laramie, you know, but we weren't hauling him up and down the roads. We weren't putting world's champions on him. And then, you know, the added bonus to him is anybody that's ever saw him or has seen pictures of him is he was just absolutely drop dead gorgeous besides. But that was secondary for what we were doing at the time. We bought him just because he was cheap and he was usable for the program that we were doing at the time.
So give me a general sense of Mr. T. What was his coloring like, his size, his temperament?
Well, he was beautiful black and white spotted bull, and probably had, you know, each horn was 18, 20 inches long. I mean, he had a big set of horns, and it wasn't mean enough they could use him in the Wrangler bullfights, but obviously he had plenty of snuff to him that they even tried to use him as a fighting bull. And he was a dangerous animal. You know, he probably weighed 1,700 pounds. And when you'd sort him and work him and stuff like that, you actually didn't get on the fence with him. You had to go over the fence, because he'd run down the alley and he might leap 8, 10, 12 inches in the air trying to take you off the top of a fence as he went by. So, you know, he wasn't bad in the arena. The bull riders weren't really afraid of him in that manner, but he was very dangerous in the back pens.
So tell me about how he really got started, like, and became more ranked than just the little hopper that he started with.
Well, you know, it was just a learned trade in today's world. He probably would have ended up as Hamburger, because today if they don't jump out and turn back immediately, they basically get culled. So we bucked him all that winter after the finals in Oklahoma. At that time I was doing the Steamboat Springs Rodeo Series before it was even a PRCA sanctioned event. And so we took him up there and we're bucking him every week up there. And so, we were bucking him quite a lot. And then Glenn Younger, ex-NFR bull rider, was going to take some bulls to a bull riding somewhere, and so we loaded him up a trailer load of bulls, and Mr. T happened to be one of him. And when he brought him back, Glenn Younger said, "Wow," he said, "that spotted bull bucked." And we thought, well, we must not don't even know what he's talking about. Anyway, we bucked him some more there in Steamboat, and he was as regular, hard to ride out through there. And we took him to the Wyoming State Fair then, and he was really fighting the chute bad, which he would do. He wasn't, at that time, he wasn't real well chute broke. And we had him tied in, and when the guy that was running the gate rope didn't get it off his horns, and he jumped out and he turned back into that gate rope. And after that, for quite a few trips, we would tie a gate rope on his horns, and every time he turned back into it. And it was quite a while before we were brave enough to take that rope off, that we figured he had it figured out on his own.
What was his first trip to the national finals like?
Well, it was 1985, so it was just a year after we bought him. And, prior to that, he'd went to the Pro Tour, not to jump out, but, in Casper, the team deal where, and anyway, he bucked off Lane Frost and Tough Hedeman. Lane one night, Tough the next afternoon. And so he really lit him up. So Brian McDonald took him to that 85 finals. And he went to the 85 finals and won runner-up to the bull of the NFR. And see, even at that time, he's 7 years old. Most bulls are kind of at the twilight of their career or going down at 7. He is just now coming into his own. But yeah, he went to Casper and bucked off Lane and Tough back to back and bought his ticket. He went to NFR in the TV pin, and like I said, he was second bull at the NFR, voted on by the stock contractors, which to me is always a great honor to get recognized by your peers like that.
How did he get the name Mr. T?
Well, my dad was a big fan of the TV show. I'm sure in today's world you might not remember Mr. T, but he was very popular at all, with all the gold chains and, and the gruff manner and the great big muscles and stuff. And it really didn't make a lot of difference to me, but I told him, I says, he's black and white. He's not just black. Why would we call him Mr. T? But my dad wanted to name him Mr. T, so we named him Mr. T.
Getting back to the NFR, how many trips did he make to the NFR?
He went to the NFR 6 times and never got rode. The last time he went to the NFR, he was 12 years old. In '89 when he won bull of the NFR, he's 11 years old. And that's basically, for longevity, he's in class with very few other bulls.
What do you think contributed to that longevity?
I think it's just a natural part of nature. Just like with people, some people at 60 are old and used up, and some of them are still going pretty good at 100. He just naturally had that gene to, be that athletic, and he had a body that, most animals did not have. So I don't think there's any secret to it. I think he just happened to luck out.
How many years did he go being unridden?
Well, he started that streak, in '85, and when Marty Stennert rode him in '89, so he went '85, '86, '87, '88, and '89 until Cheyenne Frontier Days.
That's quite a streak.
Oh, and especially, we hauled him hard. We went with Harry Vold all over the country, and we bucked him a lot, and he bucked off every world's champion from Donnie Gay all the way through Ted Noosh, so he got exposed and could still go that long. And then after they rode him, when Marty rode him at Cheyenne, I mean, that was just wow. It was the third time Marty had been on him. He bucked Marty off real easy at Cheyenne a few years earlier. Marty rode him almost to the whistle at Greeley, and Marty knew he could ride this bull. Marty was pumped up to have him, and excited to have him. And I mean, Marty rides him for 93, sets a new arena record at Cheyenne. Boom, next bull out, Lane Frost gets killed right in the arena. So I mean, that was hard. I mean, instead of Marty getting the accolades that he deserved, the whole attention of the rodeo world got flipped onto Lane Frost, which justifiably so, but I was just bad draw for Marty, and then he got rode 2 more times. Every time he got rode, though, he set an arena record where they rode him.
Who were those others that rode after Marty?
Ty Murray and Raymond Wessel.
What was his best year, do you think?
Oh, they're 96, 97, I mean, even 95, I mean, he was unbelievable good backtracking to the Pro Tour. When he bucked off Lane Frost that Saturday night there in Casper, it was unbelievable. I mean, that bull bucked as hard as you could imagine, and one of the greatest compliments that I think he ever received was after he bucked off Lane Frost. Jim Shoulders came up to me and he said, "You know how that might be the rankest bull I ever saw." And for Jim Shoulders to come and say that, I thought was, So I mean, and then by the time Marty rode him, not to take anything away from it, because it was still an arena record, and that same year he's still going to win that bull of the NFR. He had lost a step. And I mean, he was still spectacular, but, 95, 96, 97 were probably his very, very peak years.
Is that 90s or 80s?
8, excuse me.
What was how would you describe his style of bucking? Did he have a set style, or did he change it up?
When he picked it up, he, would vary it a little bit. He had a little bit of fade to him. He kind of wanted to drop those guys down in there, and but he would turn back to the right every time. Is my phone buzzing?
I was just making sure it wasn't the camera.
No, I was meant to turn it off and forgot. Sorry about that.
Sounds like an old beeper. What are those?
Not only that, I don't answer it, and it's the boss, it's Glaus.
Well, we can walk you up there afterwards and say hi.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're okay.
All right, my next question is, what do you think made him so good as a bucking bull?
What made him feel so good?
No, what made him really liked by the Cowboys? What was it about him that was such a good?
Well, if you've watched the interviews of Lane or Cody Snyder or those guys, I mean, and Marty Stennert was the same way. The bull riders, when they would get up, first thing they'd say is, "Oh, I want him again. I can ride him." I mean, he jumped out. He was honest. He didn't, he didn't duck and dive, and he just jumped out and bucked right there, and was just honest, and he didn't pull any tricks on him. He was, he was just what a bull rider dreams of being able to ride.
Did he know he was kind of a superstar?
Did he know it?
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, he was pretty arrogant.
When did you retire him?
After the 1990 NFR, he only got bucked once there, which was the first time. The other 5, he'd went twice, obviously. And we could see he was off a step. We talked with Brian McDonald about it. Brian wasn't going to bring him back. We were all okay with that. And I don't know how many people have been to Laramie, Wyoming in the dead of winter, but it is brutal winter country. Well, the bull at that time is 12 years old, and we got together with John Growney and decided to send him to Growney's ranch in California and retire him there out of the Wyoming weather. And that's when John had him, and there's pictures around of him and Red Rock standing at the feed, eating their feed pans and stuff together. So John took him and retired him with Red Rock out there in California.
That's quite a pair to retire
that was pretty cool. And it's him and Red Rock there together.
So then when did he pass away?
94, I believe. I don't absolutely quote me on that, but I'm sure it was, like I said, I'm 99% sure it was 94.
Yeah. And tell me the story about how he got his skull was found then?
How he did what?
How you found him?
Oh, well, I didn't find him, but I guess, and we'd have to confirm it with Growney, but anyway, I know he died down by the river there on Growney's ranch, and I don't know, anyway, he got covered up with sand, and then years later, they had a flood go through there and uncovered him, and they salvaged his skull and got me the skull. And that, you know, that was right at the start of the DNA and the genetics, so he got, you know, we DNA'd him and directly put him back to Cash and Remington and those bulls, because he was still breeding cows at 14 years old. He bred Cash's mom at 14 years old, which is, you know, basically unheard of for a bull to be breeding. So, you know, I don't know exactly where he died out there in California and stuff, but I know it's alongside the river, covered up with sand, and the flood uncovered him.
So tell me about some of his sons. How did they do in the rodeo world?
Well, obviously at the time, Cash was one of the most famous of them all. And you know, back then, we just would take him and Phantom, a big Kia cross bull, went to finals like 3 or 4 times, and turn him out on the cows during rodeo season. You know, give them a month off, breed cows, and then take them back in and go into bucking them. And, you know, that was unheard of. So mine were never DNA'd back to him except for High Five. And that High Five actually broke Mr. T's arena record in Cheyenne 3 years later. They were 94 on High Five, which is still co-holder of the arena record at Cheyenne. And then anybody that was following rodeo bulls at the time, when Cash was going, I mean, he was one of the most famous bulls going at the time.
What was it like when you got the phone call saying that they were going to induct him into the Hall of Fame?
Well, and of course it was Growney that called me, which I thought that was kind of fitting. And of course it was, you know, it was a big moment. I mean, you know, it had been so long that, you know, it had become kind of dormant deal. But, you know, when we renominated him and I knew he was under consideration, it was something that you really, really would hope for, but you didn't want to get your heart set on because, you know. But anyway, it was really exhilarating. You know, the only down thing on it at all was my dad was a super big fan, and really things like this he really enjoyed. And, you know, I'm sure, I mean, it was still an unbelievable good phone call, but the little bit of downside was that Pete was no longer with us.
So what does this induction mean to you and your family?
Well, actually it means a lot. You know, my brothers all live in Laramie, but, you know, everybody's been busy. We see each other a little more now, but we don't see each other. They are all coming down, all 3 of my brothers, one of them's bringing a son, bringing wives. I've got cousins from down here around Colorado Springs. They're all coming and stuff. So, I mean, it has really pulled the whole family together. I mean, they've all come in and supported, and, you know, my brothers were around when he was bucking and stuff. And so, you know, I mean, it's pulled the family back together some.
I have one more question. What do you think was his best ride, like his best trip out?
Well, you know, there was lots of them. There's him bucking Donnie Gay off at the short round at Denver. There was Lane Frost when Shoulder said he was the rankest bull he's ever saw. But, you know, the one that I believe is in the top 10 moments of NFR history was when Jim Sharp has him in the 10th round at the NFR in '89, and obviously the year Lane gets killed. Well, in '87, I think Jim Sharp had rode 6 or 7 bulls in a row. In 88, he rides all 10 of them. In 89, he's rode 9 in a row, and he's got Mr. T for his 10th bull. Well, anybody that's watched 8 Seconds has already seen, knows about Tough riding his bull in Lane's memory for 16 seconds. That's become very famous. Well, it comes down to Jim Sharp on Mr. T. Tough has already rode his bull. If Jim Sharp gets bucked off, Tough is world's champion. If Jim Sharp can ride Mr. T, Jim Sharp is world's champion. So, the crowd behind the chutes and the electricity and everything going on was, really, really intense back there. And then you throw in the other scenario, PRCA had put it on network TV that year, so it's going out basically live on network TV. And so, the hype was there. It was unbelievable. Jim Sharp goes to slide to his rope. They blink it off and go to another program. So anybody that was watching the NFR and knows all this going on, all of a sudden is totally in the dark, is what happens with Jim Sharp and Mr. T. As it turns out, Mr. T jumps out, throws Jim Sharp off pretty easy, and wins bull of the NFR. But, and I'm not saying that was his rankest trip, but that was the most memorable. That to me was even bigger than Marty's. Marty's was great, don't get me wrong, but I don't believe there's ever going to be another human ride 26 bulls in a row at the NFR and go down to a world's championship after Tufts made that tribute to Lane and everything. That was just, that was a moment that doesn't happen often in sports.